I am Richa Shakya, Assistant Professor from Noida Institute of Engineering and Technology, Pharmacy Institute, Greater Noida. Today I am here to giving the lecture on the topic from the subject, that is a Human Anatomy and Physiology-II, that's code is a BP201T. So here this is lecture number 6. In the previous lecture we were discuss about the forebrain. Now we discuss about the midbrain and the hindbrain. So we will discuss about the what is the structure and the function of the midbrain and what is the structure and function of the hindbrain. So let's start with the introduction part of the midbrain. So the midbrain is also known as the mesencephalon. Okay, the forebrain is known as the proencephalon and this midbrain is known as the mesencephalon, and it is forwardmost portion of the brain stem, and it is associated with vision, hearing, motor control, sleep and wakeful arousal, alertness and temperature regulation. Means this midbrain control these all kinds of activities which includes vision, hearing, motor control, sleep and awakeness cycle, or its arousal or alertness, and for the temperature regulation. So this temperature regulation is done by the hypothalamus. Now the midbrain is the topmost part of the brain stem, and it connection between the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, the midbrain is located between the thalamus and the hypothalamus of the brain and pons of the hindbrain. So the location, if you talk about the location, so the midbrain is located between the thalamus or the hypothalamus of the forebrain and the pons of the hindbrain. Now the midbrain, so midbrain is a region, of the tactum. Okay, the principal region of the midbrain is the tactum, cerebral adduct, tegmentum and the cerebral peduncle. So these are the major regions of the midbrain. The midbrain adjoins the diencephalon, that is the thalamus, hypothalamus, epithalamus and subthalamus. Okay, so it is adjoined with the diencephalon, while caudally means from the in the lower side. So caudally it adjoins with the hindbrain with pons, medulla and the cerebellum. Okay. In the rostral direction, the midbrain noticeable laterally. Now this is a structure of the midbrain. So it is a structure of the midbrain. Okay, then there is a cerebellum. So if we cut the midbrain, so this looks like that. Now this area is known as the tactum, and this is known as the oculomotor nuclei third. Okay, now this is medial lemniscus, and this is the red nucleus, this is substantia nigra, and this fibrous part is known as the fibrous of perineal tract. Now there is some rectangular shape that is known as a reticular formation, and this black spot is known as a cerebral adduct, and this superficial this part is known as a superior colliculus. So this is the structure of the midbrain, and this part is known as the crux of cerebral peduncle, and this is the ventral. Okay, so this is the structure of the brain. This is the structure of the midbrain. Now, inferior colliculus, they are connected with the movement of head and trunk in response to hearing stimulus. Okay, whenever they hear a sound and then you move back. Okay, so it is inferior colliculus. So they are connected with the movement of head and trunk in response to hearing stimulus. Now, cerebral peduncle. So this cerebral peduncle is also known as the cura cerebri. So they are pair of thick band of longitudinal nerve fiber presented on the floor ventral side of the midbrain. This connects upper and lower region of the brain. So this cerebral peduncle is a pair of thick longitudinal nerve which is present on the floor of ventral side, and this is connected with the help of upper and lower region of the brain. Now, the midbrain consists of the substantia nigra, which is a dark pigmented nuclei, and it controls the subconscious muscles activity. So, this substantia, that is this part. Okay. So, this substantia nigra is responsible for the muscle activities. Now, midbrain consists of the red nuclei at the left and the right side, and it also rich in amount of blood supply and iron. So, it is produce red pigmentation portion. That is why it is known as the red nucleus, because it is rich in the iron. Okay. Now, two nuclei of the midbrain are associated with the cranial nerves, that is oculomotor and trochlear. Okay. So, this nuclei is of the midbrain associated with the cranial nerves, oculomotor, that is the nerve number 3, and trochlear, that is the nerve number 4. So, this nerve responsible for the movement of the eyeball and changes in the pupil size and shape according to the reflection of the light. Okay, whenever the reflection of light too much high or low, so the size of the pupil will already changes. Now, the trochlear, a nerve coordinate the eyeball movement. A band of white matter known as medial laminus in the midbrain pass the impulses medulla oblongata to the thalamus, which discriminative touch, pressure and vibrations. So, this is a function of the trochlear and the oculomotor nerve of the cranial. Now, the function of the midbrain, so the pair of anterior optic lobe, which are also known as superior colliculi, is related with the vision. The pair of posterior optic lobe, also known as inferior colliculi, which is related to auditory, and these act as a coordination centers between the hind and the forebrain. Okay. So, this is the main function of the midbrain, to vision on auditory with the help of the anterior optic lobe or the posterior optic lobe. Now, the pons. Okay. Now, the pons is the middle portion of the three parts of the brain stem sitting above the medulla and below the midbrain. It acts as a relay between the cerebellum and cerebral hemisphere, and it is about the 2 to 3 centimeter long. Okay. So, this is the part of the cerebellum, right. So, the pons has bulbous shape and has two main components on the basis of points, that is basal ventral part and the pointy tangentum, that is a dorsal part. Now, the pontine tangentum is the continuous with the tangentum of medulla and midbrain. So, this pontine tangentum is continuous with the tangentum and medulla and with the midbrain, and it contains the multiple white matter tract, that is a medial longitudinal fasciculus and the medial laminus, lateral laminus, and the grey matter consists of cranial nerves of the nuclei. So, it is about the PONS. So, PONS is basically, if you talk about the what is the location of the PONS. So, PONS are the middle portion of the three part of the brain stem sitting above the medulla and the midbrain. So, it is above the medulla or the midbrain. Now, the functions of the PONS. So, what are the functions of the PONS? Basically, the function of the PONS are it contains nuclei that deals with respiration, swallowing, bladder control, hearing equilibrium, eyeball movement and facial expressions. So, these all are controlled by the PONS. So, these are the functions of the PONS, and with the dorsal tegment lie 4 cranial nerve nuclei. These are trigeminal nerve, okay, these are trigeminal nerve, abducens nerve, facial nerve and vestibular nerve. So, these are the 4 cranial nerve nuclei. So, trigeminal nerve is the fifth one. Number 5th is a trigeminal nerve of cranial nerves. It coordinates with chewing and sensation of the movement of the head or neck. Now, abducens nerve, it is a 6th cranial nerve, and the function of, or it control the eyeball movement. Then the facial nerve, that is the 7th number of cranial nerve, it coordinates with the facial expression, taste and salivation, and the vestibulo-ocular, that is a cranial nerve number 8, which is control the auditory equilibrium. Now, medulla oblongata, so it is the lowermost part of the brain stem and it continues of the superior portion of the spinal cord. It developed from the mesencephalon from the embryonic development. It is situated at the base of skull and it start from the foramen magnum and extends to the inferior border of the pons, distance of about 3 centimeters. The ascending and descending sensory and motor white matter tract that connects the brain to spinal cord passes the medulla oblongata, and in the anterior side, this is ascending and this is anterior side, the medulla oblongata consists of the 2 bulges known as pyramids. They contain the large motor tracts that pass from the cerebral to the spinal cord. Now, the superior to the junction of the medulla with the spinal cord, most of the axon is left pyramid, cross to the right side of and axon in the right side of the cross left side. Okay, means this superior junction of the medulla with the spinal cord, most axon is left pyramid cross to the right side and the axon in the right side cross to the left. Okay. Now, medulla oblongata consists of this cardiovascular center, means it also control the rhythmicity of the heart. So, whenever the impulse is high or the heart rate is increases, so it is controlled by the medulla. Okay. So, this medulla oblongata consists of vascular center that regulates the rate and the force of heartbeat and a diameter of the blood vessels. Okay. So, whenever the heartbeat increase, so it controlled. Okay. Now, other center of the medulla oblongata regulates and coordinate with swallowing, vomiting, coughing, sneezing and hiccups. So, these all are the activities are performed or are done under the medulla oblongata. Okay. Now, if we talk about what is the function of medulla oblongata. So, basically from the medulla oblongata there is a 5 pair of cranial nerve. Okay. In the pons there is a 4 pair. Now, in the medulla oblongata there is a 5 pair. So, first is vestibulocochlear, that is a cranial nerve number 8. So, it coordinates with the auditory equilibrium. Now, glossopharyngeal, that is the cranial nerve number 9. It coordinates swallowing, salivation and taste, and this is a vagus. This is important one because the role of the vagus is too much vast. So, the vagus nerve, that is a 10 number, which is really impulses and from the many thoracic viscera. Okay. Now, accessory, that is a cranial nerve number 11. It coordinates with the head and shoulder movements. So, cranial nerve number 11, that is accessory, it coordinates with the head and the shoulder for the movement process. Okay. Now, the last one is the hypopharyngeal, which is the cranial nerve number 12, which is responsible for the tongue movement. Whenever the person is speak, so there is a movement of the tongue. So, this tongue or during the swallowing, during the chewing, during the eating of food, so there is a movement of the tongue. So, this movement of the tongue is controlled or it is controlled by the hypoglossal, okay, which is a cranial nerve number 12. Now, this is about the brain stem, okay, in which the brain stem. Now, we talk about the cerebellum. So, cerebellum, what is cerebellum? Cerebellum is the hind part, hind brain. It is a back portion of the brain. Okay. So, the cerebrum, which is the Latin known as the little brain. Forebrain सबसे बड़ा होगा, that is the cerebrum, सबसे बड़ा space होगा, after that midbrain, and जो सबसे छोटा brain होगा, that is the cerebellum. In the Latin it is known as a little brain. So, this cerebrum is a major structure of hindbrain, in that located to the near of the brain stem. So, this cerebellum is located near to the brain stem, and this part of the brain stem is responsible for coordinating voluntary movements, and it is also responsible for number of functions including motor skills such as balancing, coordination and body postures. So, these all are controlled by the cerebellum. The cerebellum is the largest structure of the hindbrain and can be found in the back portion of the skull below the temporal occipital lobes and behind the brain stem. Now, when we looking at the brain, the cerebellum looks much like the smallest structure separated from the brain and found beneath the hemispheres of the cerebral cortex, and this cerebellum consists of cortex covering white matter as well as the ventricles filled with the fluid. Okay. Now it is divided into two hemispheres just like the cerebral cortex, and these are the two main parts of the cerebellum, that is the cerebellar cortex and cerebral nuclei. So this cerebral cortex, a layer that contain the fluid tissue containing the most of the cerebellum's neuron, and this cerebral nuclei, what is the cerebral nuclei? So it is the innermost, it is the innermost part of the cerebellum which containing the nerves that communicate or inform, collect the information and revert to the cerebellum. Now if we talk about the function of the cerebellum, so there are the several key functions of the cerebellum include balance and the posture. So whenever there is a problem in the cerebellum portion, so person will not able to stand properly. Okay, so the balance of that person is not maintained. Now, so the cerebellum is maintain the balance and portion of the posture of the body. It also plays on the mental function in the movement of the body, motor learning and the vision. So these all are the function of the cerebellum. Now if we talk about they are the receive information from the other regions of the brain and the nervous system. It includes the brain stem, spinal cord and the cerebellum. If in the previous slide we discussed the basic functions of the cerebellum, but there is other also the function of the cerebellum which is received from the other sides of the brain, other parts of the brain, that is the from the maybe it's a nervous system, it's maybe the from the spinal cord, from the brain, for the midbrain or from the forebrain. So it is the three functional nerve area, that is the cerebellum, spinocerebellum and vestibulocerebellum. So we discuss here one by one. So cerebellum, it is the largest division formed by the lateral hemispheres. It is involved in the planning of the movement and the motor learning. Okay, and it receives the input from the cerebral cortex and pontine nuclei and send the outputs to the thalamus and the nuclei. It also regulates the coordination of muscles during the movement. If the person is not able to move, then there is a problem in the cerebellum. Now spinocerebellum, it is comprised with the vermis and the intermediate of the zone of cerebral hemisphere. It is involved in the regulation of body movement, allowing for error and correction that receive the propagation information. Okay, so it is responsible for the movement. Now last one is the vestibulocerebellum. So the function is to equivalent to focal nodular lobe. It involved in the controlling balance and ocular reflexes, mainly in the fixation on the target. So it received the inputs or the impulses from the vestibular system and send the output to the vestibular nuclei. So with this is the all about the midbrain and the hindbrain. So what is the function of midbrain, what is the structure of midbrain, or what is the function of what is the structure of hindbrain or the midbrain, we will discuss here. So this is all about the brain part. Okay, thank you.